Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker announces Friday his support for a law that would create strict regulations in the hemp industry. Pritzker says more than 9,000 people are getting sick with Delta 8 poisoning or consuming marijuana, and half of them are children. Pritzker calls on the state's House to pass a bill that will have strict regulations for intoxicating hemp products. The bill would ban deceptive packaging and regulate how legal cannabis is made.
The Illinois cannabis industry was built on safety, fairness, and equity. Intoxicating hemp products are not consistent with those values. The public deserves to have their children protected and to know that the products that they are ingesting are safe.